Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio. And today we are so happy to once again be joined by the fabulous, the fantastic Bridget Todd. Welcome, Bridget.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to hang out with you gals.
Yes, it always is. And we know you're so busy, so we're so happy we can make this work, even when the topics at hand are not so great. But before we get into that, loaded question as always, how have you been, Bridget?
Things are okay. It's Pride here in DC. DC celebrating the 50th anniversary of Pride in DC. So it's World Pride being celebrated here in DC. So it's been a more, even with the looming large figure who also lives in DC, we're still finding a way to have a good time here. So things have been a little cheery. How are you two doing?
I think I'm doing well. I'm going to find a doctor, Bridget, and this is news for me. I haven't been to the doctor in forever, but I'm going to take that step. And also I've just been having fun with friends. So
what has been keeping you from going to the doctor? Just out of curiosity, if you don't have to talk, well, I'm curious.
I know, the way you started that felt like we had an intervention with you or something.
No, I genuinely was
Annie's
like,
time.
What is Anney?
It's time.
Yeah.
No. I think a lot of people unfortunately can relate. I haven't had a good experience going to the doctor. And so I also wait until I'm like absolutely convinced maybe I might actually be on death's door before I'm going. But I've actually had like 2 panic attacks recently that I thought I was on death's door and I still didn't go. And I was like, this is probably a sign. You should really go and check and make sure these are actually panic attacks. But yeah, baby steps ahead.
And I have to say, like, nothing makes me feel more like I am being the adult grown woman I am. Like when I take care of the medical thing I've been avoiding for a long time, when I finally make that appointment. So just focus on that, how good you're going to feel once you actually book the appointment, talk to a medical professional. You're going to be treating yourself right.
Yes, I thank you, Bridget. This has been a long time coming, to be honest, but I'm going to do it, and I'm going to take it as a positive that I'm doing it. Mm-hmm.
It's self-care, Anney.
Yeah, Sam and I are going to hold you accountable on this.
I like that this is like an intervention again. Yeah, I think for me, for doctors, it's always the fear that I'm going to go and they're going to tell me there's nothing wrong with me, and I'm making things up in my head. It's one of those things that it's like doesn't really make sense, but at the same time that, the history of doctors and what they say to women in general, how that goes. We know how that goes. But yeah, for myself, it's an actually nice day. It's been a nice day for a few days. The rain has stopped in Atlanta for a little bit. It's gotten cool. I have a little mini garden, Bridget. I have a little mini garden, and I've gotten at least 5 cherry tomatoes. I've been very proud of this.
I love how it's so, when having your own garden, it'll be so much work and so much money and so much effort. And you're like, oh, I got 1 blueberry. Totally worth it.
I was like, I held on to it, took little pictures. I was like, it is the cutest, most perfect tomato ever. I will say it was a starter plant from Costco, not a sponsor yet. Hello, Costco. But I'm still proud of it. I still feel like we did it, even though it was already kind of there before we bought it.
I mean, I will say those tomato plants, don't let them fool you. Like they're actually pretty labor intensive in terms of kind of foods that you can grow on a small garden. So you actually started with a high bar. So the fact that you got any kind of thing that you could eat at all is really, you should feel good about that.
We got 5. So, I would count that as a win over here.
I think that is a win. But this is probably one of the most depressing transitions I've ever made. Speaking of not believing women, we do have a topic today that is full of that kind of those kind of tropes that we hear a lot. And it's a lot to go through. So, Bridget, what are we talking about today?
I have to give a pretty big trigger warning because it is the Sean Diddy Combs trial. As folks probably know, he was arrested back in 2024 because currently the trial is ongoing. As soon as he was arrested, as soon as I saw the news, I thought, oh, this is about to be a storm of like disinformation, half-truths online, gendered tropes, all the things that we know kind of go hand in hand with this kind of thing. And I've actually been following how this has been playing out since his arrest. And so now that the trial is happening, I feel like it's a great time to sort of get into all of it.
Yes, and all of it encompasses quite a lot. And I think for some people it can feel kind of like easy to dismiss, because he feels kind of, at least to me, like that was a long time ago, that guy. But actually, no. And actually, it does matter a lot. Can you talk about that?
Oh, absolutely. Right. So it seems like every day there's a new celebrity wrongdoing story out there in the news. But I would argue that this trial is more than this one celebrity did something bad for a few reasons. One, it's that Combs is a very, very powerful figure. Again, if you're a younger listener, you might think of him as a little bit of a throwback, but he is definitely more than a musician. He is one of the most powerful figures in Hollywood. His influence reaches far beyond entertainment. From media, he used to have he used to be the owner of a TV news channel called Revolt, which is still around, but my understanding is that Diddy is no longer at the helm, that had a pretty important partnership with NBC Universal and Comcast. He's very influential, involved in politics, used to have a very sort of well-regarded voting initiative, very involved in tech. Fun fact is that he was, when Elon Musk decided to take over Twitter, Sean Combs was one of his early investors. And I was reading a book about this, and early on, some of the Black leadership was like, oh, we're a little bit worried about how Elon Musk might moderate racial slurs on the platform. And to kind of quell concerns about this, he was like, Elon Musk was like, oh, well, do you know Diddy? Puff and I are personal friends. We text a lot. Kind of like doing I have a Black friend, and that Black friend is Sean Combs, right? And so I share that to share Sean Combs is this incredibly influential person who sits at the crossroads of all these different types of power that go so beyond music. I've been rewatching old episodes of the Real Housewives of New York, like first season, second season, third season. The amount of times that Sean Combs comes up on this show about sort of well-to-do New York white ladies who are all wealthy. When they go to the Hamptons, they're like, oh, are you going to the Diddy party later? Like, he is such a figure in so many different circles. And that's clearly intentional, right? Like, that's clearly a way for him to sort of become this powerful figure that no one would ever believe these horrible things about, because he hobnobs with such, powerful, wealthy people. And so I would argue that this story with Combs is really not just about celebrity scandals. It's really about power, how it's held, how it's protected, and how social media can really be used to shape the narrative and also reinforce really harmful attitudes and tropes that silence victims and then shield the elite from accountability when they do something wrong.
Yeah. And I have been reading about these statistics around bots that are used in cases like this, and just building up this social media anger and presenting usually a very misogynistic viewpoint to get people to believe like, oh, this is the truth and this is what everyone thinks, so you should think that as well. And this is not the first time we've seen this in big celebrity cases.
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting that you mentioned bots, because there's been so much reporting and analysis after the fact with the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial about the way that specifically bots were used in an effort to shape public opinion. I would argue very successfully. But again, that was another example of like a highly coordinated PR campaign with this big digital component that was really about sort of turning the public opinion against Amber Heard, that really relied on these misogynistic tropes, and really kind of gave a platform to people who will take any excuse to tear down a woman in public. I'll be curious to see how the trial with Sean Combs plays out. I feel like the ways that we're seeing this trial play out online, I would actually argue that, like, most people have gleaned that Sean Combs has done something wrong. Like it's not taking the way that I think it used to take when people would sort of have these online smear campaigns.
Right. It's interesting because cases like these have always been rumors. You know, like the truth is kind of insinuated from jump. But you always hear like the rumors at hand. There are things that have been mentioned. As a person who is in social work, one of the things that we would talk about often is when we see campaigns or when we see trials that go into civil lawsuits, and everybody, that like whole beginning jump of people being defensive and being like, oh, they're just trying to get money. And I remember that being a thing for Cassie as well. Like when she was first coming out, she's like, why didn't they go to the police? You know, that aged old, like really bad take on that ideal that if it's something really bad, he would have been arrested by now, right? And it feels interesting that this type of case has come into such a way that people are having to really question that conversation about like, oh, it's not just rumors.
Yeah. Yeah, there have definitely been rumors about this for a long time. And to your point, Sam, like, according to the government, the reason why Sean Combs has been able to avoid arrest for this long is precisely what he's being charged with, that he used his influence and his businesses and his power and his money to silence victims and essentially engage in a sex trafficking, fraud, and coercion ring. So the things that he is being charged with, he's being charged with civil charges from mostly women and some men who are accusing him of a wide range of sexual crimes, and 5 criminal counts, 1 of racketeering, 1 of conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. So those 5 criminal charges are what the bulk of this trial is about. So basically the government says that Sean Combs has been using its business enterprise to conduct a criminal sex trafficking and kidnapping ring, and that he was using money and power to intimidate victims and to cover up these crimes for a really long time. One thing that I just want to say super clearly is that if there was one narrative I've seen sort of being pushed in this trial, is that he is being accused of being freaky. Like, oh, he's being, like, the reason why he's being on trial right now is because of freaky sex party gatherings that he would call, quote, freak-offs. But I want to be very clear. He is not facing charges for being freaky or having freaky sex or freaky parties. And not for nothing, everybody knows that real freaky people create a culture of consent. So that wouldn't even be what this is. He is being accused of being the ringleader of this like massive criminal enterprise that involved subjecting people to a pattern of physical and sexual abuse, according to federal prosecutors. And so investigators are saying that over a span of years, Combs would ply his victims with drugs and even resort to violence and intimidation to force them into these days-long sex sessions. He did not act alone, according to federal prosecutors. However, no one else has been criminally charged in this case yet. According to the government, Combs allegedly had assistants, managers, and security staff who would make sure that women and male sex workers were present at these hotel days-long sex sessions, and that the hotels would be staged and stocked with supplies like lubricant and baby oil. Which, do we remember another man accused of gross behavior who also allegedly had a thing for baby oil, where baby oil up, not go?
Yes, unfortunately.
Hugh Hefner. I mean, I'll take this opportunity to remind folks that baby oil should not be used as a sexual lubricant. And if you are using baby oil as a sexual lubricant, it's no good for anybody. And I find it so curious that both of these men accused of sexual misconduct and sexual crimes apparently both had a thing for baby oil. I don't know what's going on there. Somebody could write an interesting essay about what's going on there, but don't you find that curious?
I wonder if it's like, to me, I'm like, it just seems like misinformation. Their inability to actually research what is and isn't effective and just go on this works. Look at this. Like they accidentally stumbled upon it. In my mind, like they're just like, oh, baby oil. Yeah. Yeah, okay. This does it. And just for anybody who does use that, go see a doctor.
Yeah, I mean, I use oil cleanser on my face when I'm wearing face paint or sunscreen.
Right.
I don't want to think about what that does internally, right? Like, no, not a good
Go see
thing
a
to be
doctor.
used for sexual lubricant.
Oh, I feel like the best. It's a sad spectrum, because I think the best answer would be misinformation, and the worst answer would be knowing that it causes pain and or just some infantilizing with the baby oil part.
That's also my thinking, that there must be some kind of a, association with baby oil and like, I don't know. It's something is going on there.
Something is going on there. And it had been happening, as Samantha said. There had been rumors. There had been people kind of talking about what was going on here. But it took some people speaking up, being vocal about it before we're finally getting this trial. So can you talk about that?
Yes. So the person who is sort of the main voice at the center of a lot of what's going on is R&B singer Cassie Ventura. So Cassie was in a personal and professional relationship with Sean Combs for over a decade, and her civil lawsuit was the watershed suit that preceded all the other charges. In November of 2023, Cassie filed a federal lawsuit against Combs alleging years of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. Her lawsuit also named Combs' businesses, so Bad Boy Entertainment, Bad Boy Records, Epic Records, and Combs Enterprises. After only a day, so she came forward with these charges, it was like hours later, they settled these charges out of court. But her willingness to come forward really opened the floodgates for a dozen other lawsuits against Combs. And so Cassie's lawsuit alleged that this was just the beginning of Combs' coercion and abuse, which she says took over her life. Sam, you were talking about kind of rumors and whispers. I'm a music person. I'm an R&B person. And I remember when Cassie first came on the scene, there was a little bit of a feeling of, she had this one great debut album. Then there was a very long time until she released another album. And there was a question of it seems strange that her career didn't take off more, considering that she's in a personal and professional partnership with one of the most important names in music. People will be like, what's going on with her career? Well, this lawsuit really gives us a little bit of a glimpse into what might have been going on, because she says that her abuse by Combs essentially took over her life. He would force her to take illicit drugs and force her to participate in these days-long sex sessions with male sex workers, where Combs would film her and physically assault her. The lawsuit said that when he would attack her physically, this was often witnessed by Combs' staff, like employees of Bad Boy Entertainment, and she would scream out. There's a very compelling piece of testimony she gave where she's crying on a plane, and she says, doesn't anybody see this? And nobody intervenes. And so she says that that's basically what she was up against for years. And we don't actually have to take Cassie's word for it, because we saw evidence of this with our own eyes. Earlier this year, CNN published footage of Combs attacking Cassie in a hotel lobby. Prosecutors alleged that there was a male sex worker still in their hotel room at the time of their surveillance video recording. Cassie testified that this video was shot by hotel security footage when she was in the middle of one of these sessions in their hotel, and she was just like, I gotta get out of here, and left. And in this video, you see her walk out of a hotel room, hit the elevator button, Combs comes into the scene and really attacks her, knocks her down, and drags her back into the room. It's horrifying to watch. So initially, when Cassie came forward, Combs was doing exactly, Anney, what you were saying, where he said, oh, she's just lying, she just wants a payday, yada, yada, yada. Well, then this footage came out, and he basically had, I guess they were like, oh, we gotta settle this one. I can no longer pretend like this didn't happen. The reason why that footage took so long to become public was that Diddy allegedly paid off hotel security to keep that footage buried until we saw it on CNN.
Right. It was really interesting because I remember when Cassie first came out with that lawsuit, and there were so many people going and defending Diddy and talking about how she was just all about the money and why is she doing this now, that she's gotten broke since leaving him or whatnot. But I too, growing up in the R&B era and loving P. Diddy and the whole crew, remember when she first came out with her first song and then watched her become his girlfriend, I guess. And then as I was really huge into like making of the band, loved Danny Kane, had that first album, still remember it really well. And then saw Dawn with that. I was like, wait a minute, what's happening? And this was so freshly after J-Lo that it just seemed odd. The timing was weird. He was doing way too much seemingly. And I remember thinking, Cassie, I was like, you're actually kind of good. Why aren't you singing? Oh,
exactly.
You're just now his girlfriend? Like, that was such an odd jump. And also seeing Dawn, because during that time, I remember there was a lot of drama.
Yes. So I also watched all the iterations of Making the Band, and Dawn Richards of Danny Kane. So Danny Kane was the girl music group that was formed in the third iteration of MTV's Making the Band, which was a show where Diddy would put together a music group, and then if they worked out, they would get signed to his record label. And so Dawn Richards from Danny Kane, so before Cassie ever came forward, Dawn had been speaking out about what a bad guy Diddy was. And I feel like she was really treated like a crazy psycho. People will be like, oh, this woman is so difficult. Like, Diddy gave her a chance, and this is how she repays him. Like, I feel like that's really how people framed her. And I mean, well, we see who was telling the truth, because Dawn went from just speaking up about this to having people tell her that she was crazy or making it up to testifying in a federal court during this trial. So yeah, we see how crazy she was. Like, obviously she wasn't making this up, because here we are having a federal court case about it.
Aubrey also was painted as the villain. And she was like at the very beginning, and everybody was calling her the drama queen, and why the group failed was because of Aubrey. But then, like, as it again comes about, because they played her as the diva card, they played her as the over the top princess and big villain in this conversation too. And she was the loudest one before, like, and especially watching Dawn being on Sean Combs' arm. She was like, this is weird. This is not cool. They did all these things. And it turned out she was the only one that did not sign the NDA out of the group. So she was very, very loud about, she didn't ever accuse, but she was just like, this is not what you think it is. And she was really loud about that, too.
She put out a thing in People magazine. And to be clear, she was not subpoenaed or called to testify in the current trial, but she put out a piece in People magazine, I think just a couple of days ago, where she said, I have been speaking the truth about Diddy for 20 years. And you're absolutely right. The way that she was so easily painted as a delusional drama queen diva. And it's like, oh, well, we see who was delusional, because one of us is going in front of a federal court right now, and it's not Aubrey O'Day, okay?
Right. There's so much to be said in this case. It was, again, following up, the initial part was like, they're all lying, they're just trying to get paid. And Diddy was doing a kind of good job in painting Cassie as that as well. I remember, like, for the first, like, split second, until that video was released, people were like, yeah, this is another he said, she said, and she's causing this drama. Again, all these things. And then as it comes about and that video comes out, everybody's like, oh, never mind. Oh, never mind. And then you don't really know, because they did settle that case out of court, and it was so quick, and everybody's like, oh yeah, she got her pay. We don't know what, but we know something's gone down. And then trying to figure out what was in that was so even more damning than that one video. So there's a lot to be said about what was in her testimony.
Totally. Her testimony has been heartbreaking. Some of the, I mean, and she's not the only person who's testified. There's been a lot of people testifying, but essentially she says that she was forced into these drug-fueled sexual encounters with male escorts. That, I mean, the things that she says went on during these events, I mean, I won't get into all of it here, but it is, we'll just call it unpleasant. And that, importantly, Combs would film this and then use those videos as a way to further extort her into complying. And so her mother, Regina Ventura, testified that at one point, Diddy essentially blackmailed her mom into paying him $20,000. Now, mind you, Diddy is a very wealthy man. You have Cassie Ventura's mother being forced to pay him $20,000 because he was angry that for a brief while Cassie left him and started a brief relationship with rapper Kid Cudi. And Diddy allegedly told Cassie Ventura's mother, Regina, if you do not pay me $20,000, I will release these tapes. One of the releases, he said, was going to be on Christmas Day. So Cassie's mom and her husband said they had to take out a home equity loan to fulfill that payment to Combs because it was the only way they can get the money, right? And so so not only was her testimony completely heartbreaking, when it comes to these sort of gendered tropes that we're seeing play out online, the way that people are responding to what Cassie is saying, it is also difficult because, when people say, why didn't she leave? It's like, well, he was extorting her mom, right? Like, we saw a video of her trying to leave and he physically attacks her and dragged her back into the room. So when people ask these questions of like, well, why didn't she leave? It's like, I could understand why that would be difficult. Like, he physically would not let her. Sam, Cassie was 19 when they met and Diddy was 37. So she was a child when they met. And it breaks my heart that she crossed paths with someone who was such a powerful abuser for so long. Like, some of the testimony she gives is the way that he impacted her career, that she would do things and say things just to keep him calm because he basically had the power to blow up her life, her professional life, her family life. And so she talks about how she basically would say and do anything just to keep him from doing something erratic, doing something dangerous, hurting her family. One of the pieces of testimony that I also found pretty compelling is that the rapper Kid Cudi, at one point she briefly left Diddy and started a brief relationship with him. And he testified that when this happened, Diddy broke into his home, unwrapped Christmas gifts that were under his Christmas tree, and locked his dog into a bathroom. And then shortly thereafter, his car was firebombed, right? And so he went to Diddy's, he believes Diddy did this. He went to Diddy's hotel room to talk about it. And according to this testimony, he said that it was pretty clear that Diddy was not going to let Cassie sort of be free and have a relationship with somebody else. And that essentially they broke off their relationship because Cassie said it was not safe for them to try to be with each other, try to do anything, because this was the means that Diddy would go to control her behavior and prevent her from seeing somebody else. And so, yeah, when people get into this, I mean, the trope is really tired as it is, but when people ask, like, why didn't she leave? That's a pretty good reason why someone wouldn't leave. Firebombings, $20,000 payoffs from your mom, putting your house as collateral for a loan to pay off a millionaire. Like, I can understand why she didn't leave.
Right. I mean, honestly, not that I'm not saying this is a thing, but like when people are dying around him, his like peer group, including his ex-wife, including a partner, including several other people. I know these are all alleged and there's a lot of rumors about that. Just that's enough. Even if all he said was, do you notice what happens to these people? Whether it's a threat or whether it's just, bad karma or bad whatever he wants to say, that'd be enough. That'd be enough to be like, I'll stick around. It's okay.
Yeah, I can only imagine how terrifying that would be. And the feeling of, when she briefly was in a relationship with Kid Cudi, she testified that Sean Combs told her that she and Kid Cudi were putting themselves at physical risk by doing this. And he said specifically, it won't be at my hands, but you will, like, something bad will happen to you. And, Diddy is someone who does have people close to him that have met bad means. I'll put it that way. And so I can understand why this is how she felt. I mean, that would be really, really terrifying. And so, yeah, it just goes to show that trope, for so many reasons, doesn't really apply. And it just flies in the face of what we know about abuse. Abusers often are using emotional manipulation. They're isolating people. They're controlling their partners. You also can feel more connected to your abuser because you've trauma bonded because you met him when you were 19, a child. Cassie testifies to this. She says that a lot of the times that during their relationship, when he would do this behavior that was so horrible to her, it was confusing because they had been in a relationship for over a decade, so she still felt affection and love for him. And I can only imagine how confusing that would be. And so this kind of fear of physical violence or other forms of retribution, we know keeps victims of abuse trapped in relationships. And yeah, Cassie speaks to the way that this was a huge motivating factor for her.
as we've been speaking to this whole time, unfortunately, this is not necessarily new, these tropes. And I think a lot of women, when there's a big trial like this, we kind of brace ourselves because we know we're gonna see these things play out. And now that we're seeing kind of changing technology around bots and AI, perhaps it's gotten intensified. But you also said some of it's a little different. So what are some of these other tropes that we're seeing?
Yeah, well, there's the good old-fashioned gold digger trope, which has come up quite a bit during this trial. Combs' lawyer said this in his opening statement, quote, "When you hear from the witnesses who testify here, who will tell you that they were victimized, and you ask yourself, what is your motive? For many of them, the answer is simple: money." And so he referred to Cassie's civil suit seeking damages against Combs as a money grab. The defense lawyer then asked this question of the jury, quote, "How many millions of reasons does this witness swearing to tell the truth and nothing but the truth have to lie?" But, we talked about this before. Cassie already settled her civil suit with Diddy. He settled, she filed that suit by 2 p.m. and by 3 p.m. they were like, here you go. You're right. Let's just not. And so, first of all, come on now. You wouldn't do that. You would not settle so quickly if this was some sort of a financial extortion situation. And at this point, that civil suit was already settled. So why would she continue to do this if this were all about money? That civil suit has already been settled. And I guess that's always the first thing people say when this kind of thing happens is, oh, it's a money grab. In what way are all of these people who are testifying making money? One of the people who testifies is Cassie's former good friend who said that many years ago, Diddy attacked her trying to figure out who Cassie was cheating with. I'm putting cheating in quotes because who knows what was going on. And she testified that Diddy held a wooden coat hanger up to her throat and was strangling her. And that when she told Cassie about it, Cassie was like, "Oh, it's not that big of a deal. You're exaggerating what happened, yada, yada, yada." And it ruined their friendship. She signed an NDA and she was like, "I never spoke to either of them again." In her testimony, she was like, "I just want to go on with my life." Somebody like that, what would she have to gain financially from testifying to what happened, right? She has not spoken to either of these people in a very long time. She signed an NDA. She was silent for years. What would be the financial impetus for somebody to blow up their life by testifying financially? There just isn't one.
There are others who have testified that didn't get anything and are looking pretty ugly because we know when this type of trap, especially when there's a lot of abuse, as well as trauma, as well as kind of the whole Stockholm syndrome, they become a part of the problem as well, which is a whole different conversation and a layered onion that you have to get into because there could be charges because of this. Of course, there's probably plea deals for testifying against P. Diddy / Sean Combs. But the actuality is when they start talking about these are the things I had to do for him, it doesn't look good. There's no reason to do this for themselves.
Yeah, former staffers of Diddy who say, "Oh yeah, I remember him attacking Cassie physically, her crying out, saying somebody help me, and I just looked the other way." Who would be paying them to right. say these things publicly right. if they didn't actually happen? The people who say this, I'm so curious for them to finish the thought of being paid by who? Who is the right. person who was writing the check? So they were doing these things because they were on staff being paid by Diddy. Who would be paying them now to speak up about what they did when these things make them look terrible?
Yeah. And I also think it's interesting that Cassie's so young when Sean Combs met her, and we were automatically framing it in the way she must have been in it for the money. Mm-hmm. Instead of thinking about the opposite side of it, we were oh no, this 19-year-old must have been thinking about this money though.
Anney, so I have a perhaps unpopular opinion about this that I will stand by and defend. I fully understand that a 19-year-old and a 37-year-old being consensually together is not illegal if it's above the age of consent. But come on now, what would a 37-year-old man have to be doing? What would a 37-year-old adult be doing with a 19-year-old? I don't care what anybody says. I'm not saying it's against the law, but I am saying Like, if my 37-year-old friend was like, hey, meet my new girlfriend, she's 19, I would have an opinion about that. I fully understand it's not breaking the law. I'm still going on the record saying I don't love it, and that we should be looking at that 37-year-old man like, what's going on that you're trying to start a relationship with a 19-year-old?
Right. I mean, he kind of proved what he was doing, and it had nothing to do with love or being so head over heels about someone. It was to show off and show control, which is what he did. Like, I remember clearly at one of the MTV awards and her coming out again with Dawn on Sean Combs's arms, and them having to be dressed up and him like showing them off as if it was property, and being like, look what I did, like trying to change her image. I remember her initial video to when she was in her early 20s and being established with Sean Combs, like how so much of her changed, and it was him taking credit as much as he was taking credit for these bands that he supposedly created and their images, and making sure that people, including the audience and including all of the crowd, knew that it was his ownership and that's what he was the proudest of. And people took that as a thing. They really were like, yeah, he's the man because he's not only this guy, but he can control these young girls and he can get him. It was played out, and he was very proud of that. And we see that often in these kind of dynamics in general.
Yeah, so when the charges were first popping up, people found this old interview with the rapper Young Jock, who was talking about being out with Cassie and Diddy, and that Diddy, according to him, jumped up on a bar during a party in 2018 and said, quote, "Yo, Cassie, tomorrow I want you to shave the side of your head." And that Young Jock says that he recalls being shocked by this request. He turned to Cassie and asked if she was really going to go through with it. And Cassie reportedly responded, "Well, whatever Sean wants me to do, I'm going to do." And so, as you remember, Cassie is a gorgeous woman. So it kind of, it almost weirdly backfired because it started a trend. And this is like women were wearing the half-shaved head because it was like, oh, Cassie looks so good. I'll never forget going to a hairstylist and asking for that. And she was like, "Honey, you're no Cassie." But I will never forget. She was like, "I don't think it's a good look for you. I'm not going to." She refused to do it. And so, according to Young Jock, Cassie did shave the side of her head and sent him a picture the next day to prove it, right? And so the reason why he maybe wanted to be with somebody so young was because he was looking for somebody moldable that he could control and that he could make a show of controlling. Like that, like not just controlling her behind closed doors, making a show of how much control he had over these things that are so intimate, like the way that Black women wear our hair. Like that's a very intimate, emotional thing. And I can imagine somebody wanting to make a show out of that they can control you down to these things that are so tied to our identities and who we are, like our hair.
Right. I mean, the whole, I forgot her name. She was the choreographer for making the band. They got into a huge fight.
Oh, yeah.
And then they had to cut it real quick. But like it showed his true side and true characteristics of him being really controlling and over the top with his anger issues / control issues.
I'm so glad you brought this up. And I have to I'm a little complicit in this myself because as I said, I watched every season of Making the Band. There was a time where it was iconic television. And if you watch that show, you remember that he made the band walk all the way from Lower Manhattan to Brooklyn and back to get him a slice of cheesecake in the middle of the night, which I've made that walk. It is a long walk. And that when they brought the cheesecake to him, he didn't even eat it. And I remember watching this and being like, wow, he's really teaching them a lesson. This is great TV. It wasn't great TV. It was controlling behavior of a power-hungry narcissist. Mm. And it's interesting to me the way that these things, looking back on these things now, they seem so much darker. I mean, obviously, I didn't know what was going on with Diddy then. I had not heard those allegations. I was in junior high. But the way that his controlling over-the-top behavior was glamorized and sold back to us as this is how the industry really is. Like, these people who want to be in the music industry need to understand and get on board with the way that Diddy wants to do things.
Right.
I cringe thinking about how I consumed that as entertainment when I was younger.
Right. And I had small hopes that I could be a part of a band. Maybe I could sing and I can dance and train like that.
Yes, that was glamorized to the point where they had you watching it, wishing you could walk to Brooklyn for cheesecake for this monster.
I'll do it. With all of this in conversation, though, and I've had this specific topic with a lot of different women, especially when it comes to like domestic violence and intimate violence. When we talk about when it comes to the racial aspect of this as well, I have talked to several different Black women who are so strong, talking about they never wanted to report it, they never wanted to talk about it, because if they did, they would put one more Black man under a system that we know is going to be unfair from jump. Like, there's no doubt about it. But then on top, because when you look at the comparison of the white man versus Black men who are going to be severely punished and who is going to be the scapegoat of all of everything, like there's this level of moment where they're like, do I really want to do this? Am I a part of the system if I actually tell the truth and try to get justice? There's a whole level on that. And Sean Combs has become like, on R. Kelly, too, was one of those, like, yeah, you're just doing this because he's Black type of conversation.
Absolutely. And I feel that anytime like a famous man, end of sentence, but also famous Black men especially, it is a tough conversation because, I do think in the Black community, there's this attitude that we are supposed to protect powerful abusers because they are Black. And I think what folks who are upholding this, what they're really saying is that not that we want better for everybody deserves better. No, what they're actually saying is Black men should be able to abuse people with impunity the same way that powerful white men do. And that is the future that they want. And so like that feels or looks like progress to them. And that's not what I want. I want a future where no man is allowed to do this kind of thing without consequences and being held accountable. But I think that's what they're actually saying. Like there is I don't want to get into a whole thing, but there is a famous Black man who I cannot stand, and I have many reasons why I cannot stand him, but one of the reasons why I cannot stand him is that he has a whole slew of sexual misconduct allegations in his past, and that nobody ever really brings them up that much. And when I post about it on social media, every single time there is at least one, and usually more people in my comments being like, well, Trump gets away with it. They elected Trump president. And what they're really saying is like, our guys, Black men, should be able to break the law and be horrible without consequences, just like white men. And that is not a future that I want. That is not what equality looks like to me. That is not what progress looks like to me. And I think it's interesting that you bring up R. Kelly, because it is a thing that we see, men who are powerful, who are also abusers, oftentimes they are doing things that make you think of them in a positive light, precisely so that they can, create the conditions where they can keep doing things without accountability, right? In an episode that we did of my podcast, There Are No Girls on the Internet, we were covering Epstein. And one of the things about Epstein was that he would do these things to ingratiate himself in the upper echelons of the tech world, like making big donations to MIT's renowned Media Lab and other respected institutions to shield himself from his vast crimes, right? So Bill Cosby did the same thing. R. Kelly did the same thing. Diddy, he was known for this iconic white party that was like a who's who of A-list celebrities. He donates to all the right causes. He gave $1 million to his alma mater, Howard University here in DC. All of these things that are basically meant to shield him from being called out. And even his attorney said this in a statement when Cassie was first coming forward with her allegations. His attorney said, Sean Diddy Combs is a music icon, self-made entrepreneur, loving family man, and proven philanthropist who has spent the last 30 years building an empire, adoring his children, and working to uplift the Black community. So basically it's, I've done all these great things for my community. How could I ever be an abuser? And I think that's exactly why they do these things. And so that when someone comes and says, he did this horrible thing to me, they can point to this record of, philanthropy and uplifting a community to say, like, no, he didn't. That's it's such an old playbook. It's exactly what his attorney did.
It's so gross because it's that whole level of like his good deeds outweigh his bad deeds. We just need to sacrifice some of these people for the betterment of the community. And that's been a thing everywhere, in the church even. Like we look at the amount of abuse that happens within churches and within, priesthoods. They are so willing to, not only so they don't look bad, but they also but they've done really well and they've done good for the community, and actually not remembering, but these are the underlying issues, that this is who he really is. Whether you want to believe it or not, the abuse and the control is who he is. He just has a great amount of money to be able to prove otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it's funny that you say this because when that video of him attacking Cassie from the hotel surveillance footage came forward, he made one. But before things really snowballed and it was like, okay, this is you. There's nothing you can say. He made one of those grainy videos that a celebrity makes where he was like, listen, that person that you saw in that video, that's not who I am. And it's like, it actually was who you are. It wasn't your clone. Like, it was you, homie. Like, that's you. You do these things. We saw what you do. Like, don't try to tell me that wasn't you. You've grown, this and that. That's you. We see who you are. You've shown us who you are.
Yes. And it's also interesting bringing up the religious aspect, just in terms of, I feel like this whole idea of younger people, but women in this case, can't control themselves, and grown men can't control themselves around them. And so really, whose fault is this? This is like kind of another trope.
Like, definitely the adult man.
Right. But that's something we see online, is sort of this idea of like, oh, but she was consenting though. She kind of wanted this whole thing.
Or like, she was fast, you know? And
yes.
I guess that's my sort of overall point, is that we have all of these ready-made tropes and excuses that are so repeatable that really, they just absolve men of their own behavior. And I'm just so sick of it. And yeah, it has to change. And I think that it's not surprising to me that we're seeing all of this kind of stuff play out in court, because Diddy obviously has hired lawyers to say these things. I get it. But people don't have to repeat them on the internet, right? I'm not going to begrudge Diddy getting the best, lawyer that he can to innocent until proven guilty. Totally get it. But that doesn't mean that we should be giving credence to these tropes that are so gendered and so misogynistic that absolve people of their wrongdoing. I think that's my bigger point, is that the way that these tropes are so easily and often repeated online whenever there's a high-profile case like this, I believe it trickles down into our everyday lives. And so when someone who's not an A-lister like Cassie is accusing someone who is not an A-lister like Diddy of this kind of wrongdoing, I think the same way that we're poised and primed to hear these tropes like this play out in a high-profile celebrity case, it's going to happen in these cases that are not high-profile celebrities as well. And so we should really, when we hear them, we should program ourselves to check them and to push back on them, because so often they're just not true.
Yes. So many problems. Well, what's next with the trial?
So the trial is ongoing. And according to Rolling Stone, Combs is already working on a pardon from President Trump if he's convicted. Several longtime friends and allies of Combs have begun making connections with Trump's team with the hopes of laying the groundwork for a presidential pardon if Combs is in fact found guilty on the charges. Per Rolling Stone, Combs' team is hoping to appeal to Trump by drawing a comparison between their shared stories. Two successful businessmen allegedly targeted by federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York with baseless accusations of sexual assault. Combs and Trump have reportedly maintained a friendly personal relationship for over a decade. And just recently, Trump was asked about this, and he said, nobody's asked if I'll pardon Diddy, but if he doesn't get a fair trial, I'll certainly look at it. So honestly, you never know. It might work.
Oh, it probably will. I just, didn't he already, if I remember correctly, there was a segment when he's like trying to prove that he knows black people.
Yes.
Saying like, I know Buff Daddy. We're friends.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be the worst thing in the world for Trump to have another name to throw out when he's trying to say all these different black people he knows? One of my favorite quotes of his is when he was like, I have a wonderful relationship with the blacks. And I remember thinking, like, that's how you know you have a bad relationship, when you call us the blacks. That's how you know.
Oh my God. Sure, I tried to kill a lot of them in the 80s, but hey, it's all good. Wow. And this is the saddest part, is I feel like Puff's lawyers, I keep calling him Puff because why not, is that this is probably the best route for them, going to get a pardon.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole episode about this. Trump just pardoned 2 other reality stars, the Chrisleys, for tax evasion. I think it's a good play. I think if I were on Diddy's team and I was being paid to ensure that he did not face accountability, I would say, yeah, honestly, the charges thing, let's just let that play out. Let's take it to the top. President Trump. I honestly do think if he is convicted of these charges, I would not be surprised if Trump actually did pardon him, because Joe Exotic from Tiger King has been begging Trump for a pardon. He did not get that pardon. And I think that the thing is, Trump likes the convicted celebrities who are like, project wealth in a way that Sean Combs does. Right. Wealth and influence and power. That's what he likes.
Right. I think he just pardoned the a sheriff in Virginia. And his constituents are very pissed about that. They're like, no.
Yeah, part of me is like, what you think you were? Of course he did. Like, he's a felon himself. Of course he's like, oh, yeah. Criminals? Those are my people.
Those are my people. This is my constituents. These are my people.
Yeah, and I think going back to your point earlier about watching this show and seeing P. Diddy at the time being like, hey, walk this far with cheesecake and I'm not going to eat it. And we were like, yeah. I feel like you could make a pretty easy jump to Trump being on The Apprentice and having that behavior and being real terrible, and us being like, but he knows what he's doing. Not me, but in general, people. And now look who's president.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have long believed that the overlap between the rise of reality TV fame and the rise of political power of people like Trump, there's a thread there. I guess I'll put it that way. I totally agree.
Yes. Well, again, we would love to keep talking because so many other questions come to mind. And I know you spoke about this on your own podcast, right? About AI and how it's kind of contributing to this.
Thank you for reminding me. So if folks want to hear more about the way that this trial is playing out online, we did a whole episode of my podcast, There Are No Girls on the Internet, about the intersection of Diddy conspiracy theories and AI. Spoiler alert, AI is being used to turbocharge incorrect, inaccurate information and narratives about this trial. If you have seen a story online saying that they played a video of Prince during the trial, that's not true. If you heard that Ashton Kutcher testified, that's not true. President Obama, Oprah, that's not true. All AI. Listen to the podcast for more. It is truly wild.
Oh no, it's gonna be like a Pizzagate type of thing.
Yes.
Oh no.
I mean, if you ask the internet, every celebrity under the sun somehow is all in the courtroom testifying, and then no reputable news outlet is writing about it. Isn't that interesting?
Right. And they're eating children.
Yes.
Wow. Well, thank you, Bridget. Listeners, definitely go check that out. But Bridget, where can the listeners find you in the meantime?
Well, listen to my podcast, There Are No Girls on the Internet, and you can follow me on social media, on Instagram at Bridget Marie in DC, on TikTok at Bridget Marie in DC, and on YouTube at There Are No Girls on the Internet.
Yes. And please go do that, listeners, if you have not already. If you would like to contact us, you can. Our email is hello@stuffInevertoldyou.com. You can find us on Blue Sky. I'm also a podcast. We're on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff I Never Told You. We're also on YouTube. We have a TeePublic store, and we have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Thanks, as always, to our super producer, Christina, our executive producer, Maya, and our contributor, Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff I Never Told You is a production by iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your favorite shows.